you have lots of bacteria inside your stomach, yes? So if you took your bacteria out of your stomach and moved it out the way, it's no different from taking a human off a planet and removing it from the universe, yes?
Yes.
So the bacteria thinks it's alive. You think that you're the only thing that's alive,
Yeah.
living inside a universe that you think you're only alive, but then if you pulled out of the universe, you would see it's living. No different to a bacteria inside you, inside you, inside you, inside this, inside that, inside a universe. So therefore, everything is living in that aspect.
Okay.
And I wonder if they all believe in a god
Question.
in that aspect.
Question then. What about?
That's why everything is alive.
I understand that, but let's say we have like a cow, right? Then it goes into the meat house, gets killed. Is that meat that has been killed still alive?
I have to be very careful about how I answer that because it will still break down. So technically, it has bacteria on it, which putrophilia fractions, whatever, is a process. So technically, but in a how is it living? Yeah, it's living, but in how is it living? Because it then becomes a breeding ground.
Breeding ground, yeah, or bacteria and
Microbes.
yeah, microbes.
But then what happens?
So I'd say it's fresh meat. It was a cow. Now it's a food supply. And a lot of things seem to feed on it. Is it living itself?
Well, no, kinda. It kinda does. But it's not like every single meat has a heartbeat or a tummy.
Crystals. Alive. Planets alive. Stars alive. Bits of dark matter, energy, whatever you want to call it, in between is living.
Black holes.
Living.
Even sand.
So would that be something that has purpose is life?
Yeah.
Anything that has purpose is life. A rock has purpose. Stars have purpose.
Nature.
Well, again, yeah.
Or
Bacteria that all come together to make up you.
Yeah.
Microbes, different things like that.
Yeah,
So on the atomic level, lots of things working together that are making you operate as you are now. But then what's the difference between a universe and compared to the universe, you being an infinite, no, a tiny little, even smaller than a decimal, living inside the universe is no different to a bacteria living inside of you. Technically, microbe. And everything living in synchronicity inside a synchronicity inside a synchronicity. It's a bit like Russian dolls, really.
It is.
When does it stop? When does it end? Or is it a perpetual cycle? It all goes around. There is no beginning and no end.
Perhaps, yeah.
Each thing supports the other.
then is there anything on
Therefore, the cycle of life.
Question again. Do you think Mars was a version of Earth, but something happened to it and then it
Yes.
What?
The moon Phobos and Deimos were one moon. Meteorite hit it, split apart it lost gravitational instability, which then caused the buckling of the magnetic field. This caused the core to overreact and pop out, creating one of the biggest volcanoes in the solar system, Olympus Mons, a few others. And then technically, the planet is still existing, but not quite as Earth, and therefore there's its difference.
Then
Some of the debris from the moon collision got spit out into the Kuiper Belt, which is the rocky bodies between Jupiter and Mars. And Phobos and Deimos are a couple of remnants, and all of the shrapnel that you see over Mars is parts of that explosion and some of Saturn's rings, perhaps. So because the rings don't seem to be formulating, although they do have small shepherds in them. It doesn't seem to be quite building together quite the. But there again, I guess it wouldn't, because the rings move with Saturn, whereas perhaps in the beginning, when rolling around the big dough balls in flour on a unit, one goes forwards, backwards. The cloud or the dust cloud in the nebula probably wasn't moving with it. It was probably a bit more stationary. Something else was push pull, push pull, push pull. So perhaps two star systems that get together influence each other on the dust sort of it. So pushing the dust, I'm not really sure on that one where I would settle with that. But to help you get it, understand it a little bit better, it'd be like rolling flour, having loads of flour on a unit and having a dough ball. And although it's going around in a circle, it's also going left, right as it's going around in a circle. And it's hoovering up those little debris, building the planet bigger, bigger, bigger. And that's probably why Saturn's rings will probably be around for a very long time to come. And there you are. Might have even made some of the ring arcs around Jupiter, because Jupiter has rings. Actually, most of the gas giants have rings. I think even Earth has some.
But very hardly visible.
Yeah. I think whatever hit Mercury, its surface blew into the sun. The sun gobbled that. So whatever collided with it, it hit from the back. Interesting.
Question. What life forms, I will say, do you think lived on Mars when it was like Earth?
Wow. If you go there, you'll see. If you don't, you won't. And then it leaves the mind to wander, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And
Very sure microbial. I'm sure. I reckon a few fungi.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've got another question. So there's ground first. There's clouds, then there's space, right?
Laymanly, yeah.
But then what is above space? Because nobody's ever really ventured into that question before.
Again, get there and find out.
I don't think I'll be the woman to do that.
What do you think is above space?
Does space end somewhere or it doesn't?
It doesn't ever end.
I wouldn't say so.
Is space in between some bodies, or is space everywhere even if there was nothing? Can space exist without anything in it, or does it need something in it?
What about if there's no beginning and no end? Just a perpetual loop.
That's possible.
That if you could travel fast enough through all the medium, you'd probably just keep going what would appear to be around and around, but you would be going in a straight line, is what you would feel, much like you do on Earth, if everything feels straight. But in actual fact, if you could walk around the whole of the planet and there was no ocean water, no oceans, sorry, or rivers, you would think that you were constantly walking in a straight line, and you would start at one part of the planet, and if you kept going true to your course, unless you memorized, you would then start to realize that you're going around, not around, you are walking in a straight line to your perspective. But if someone then went up in a spaceship, rocket, and watched you and followed you, they'll be, hang on a minute, you're walking around in a circle. And you just keep going around. No, I'm not. The person on the ground would say you weren't. The person up above would say you were. Someone in space that went in a straight line would do the same thing. So if you want a point to go on, I'd say that. The planets, according to the planets, if you were to stare at the sun, they think they're only going in a straight line. Lo and behold, they are orbiting around in a circle or oval shape. Again, the Earth probably more oval than rounded flat. That's why I say rounded flat. Or I should say rounded straight. Straight rounded. Either or, that's what I'm getting at. Everything appears like a straight motion that you are traveling in. Unless something was higher than you were, or you changed your perspective with an understanding that I would have been on that trajectory, then you start to realize that you're curving.
If you
So
ask-
technically all humans, if they could walk around the whole planet, they're orbiting.
If you ask me for my opinion, what I think is above space is like this building that goes all around space, and there's like a spaceship, kind of. A very huge spaceship that have these windows so you can see all the planets, and like have these like binoculars that can really reach really far if you set them to it. Like if it was there and these binoculars were being used, you could see us, what we were doing right now. Or like transporters that make you go invisible when you go onto Earth and see what people are doing.
Wonderful understanding. You're free to have your opinion. I disagree, but that's okay for you to have your own theory and understanding of what it is. And keep going with that, because it will change as you go on in time. So I like it. Very complex, but again, very nice. So if that's what you believe, then continue on down that. Everyone has a right to their opinion. I believe if you had a telescope that was strong enough, you'd see the back of your head looking through the telescope. And then everyone would say, it's straight. But light, sight, it all bends. Your sight can bend depending on the gravitational influence, I believe, enough. If you have a... It's a slight pull on gravity there, but there again, that's if something is coming towards your eyes as well as some light is traveling away from you. It's very interesting, isn't it? But I think your eyes pull in a certain amount, so the light bounces off a planet, an object, and your eyes are sort of like sucking that all in. So I think we have parts of darkness in the eyes, black holes, if you want to say that. A type of black hole that is minute enough not to suck you in into nothing, but also enough, just enough to pull in light. Just enough. So whether that would be dark energy or not, very, very strange. But again, I'm going to cut this video short, so that's just where I'm going to sit with that. But that'll give you something to think about. So, do you think you travel in a straight line? Everyone would say yes. If you were on the planet and asked someone if you went back in time and they walked from point A to point, just kept walking, they would say, the old stories I used to listen to in assembly was the belief that back in the day they believed that if you rowed out too far to sea, most of them wouldn't go out into the ocean, right? Because they thought that if you went far enough, they would fall off the planet.
Yeah.
I remember one particular teacher telling me this, that there was a belief that if they went out to sea, they would fall off the edge of the planet.
Yeah.
That's what they believed.
Yeah.
And you could probably wonder where flat Earth comes into the mind of individuals, especially when they're hearing that in assembly. I think I was hearing that when I was around 5.
Yeah.
Maybe I was probably first starting in school, actually, so maybe reception to the ages of 5, whatever that was, so probably 4 to 5.
Yeah.
These were probably some of the first stories I heard, that, you know, when they thought that they would row and row and row and eventually fall off the side of the planet like a plate.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you went back in time and they kept going and didn't have any much memory of where they had been, that's why it's very important to map and memorize. That's why you have a memory. And they went from point A to point B. They believed they just walked in one big straight line, but got confused as to how they got back around the planet without ever... So they believed they were always veering off course. That's why they then begin to map stars, map positioning, and they really needed to... I think it was pirates that probably... Well, sailors were the first ones that were confused. They did not adjust their course in any way whatsoever, yes? And they went from one end and then they come back around themselves, but knew that they came back around, but knew that they didn't. So then that started all of myths, and that they must have time traveled, or they couldn't understand it, and I don't think they could get their heads around it. And it wasn't until modern times came about when they went up and see that there's a curve there. Hang on a minute, there's more. This is curved, and they really found it hard to get their head around that. Again, it would get your head around it that this whole universal cycle is a cycle. It's a continuous cycling, cycling, recycle, cycle. There's no start, because you would have to say, well, I started from here on the planet, went all the way around, and I come back to the other end. And if I keep going, then there is no start. Then is there? There is no end. There's just basically you could say that you were. It was a continued journey, going on and on and on. You wouldn't have enough time to ever find out how you came off your course or whatnot. Anyway, so that's how you get to understand that the universe, for me, is in this. It's the same thing. So if you could go in a straight line, stay true to your course, you would end up coming back around again, but then not realize that you just orbited the universe. So I think then it's impossible for humans to ever know above that unless they took that, because they would keep trying it. They'd have to use an awful lot of whatever fuel they were using, or gravitational pull, or they'll think that they're teleporting or something really strange, or until they learn to shift their perspective, and then something that was looking above them doing that would know that they're just going around and around and around and around, and then you'd understand then that there is no start, there is no end in that understanding of it. There's recycling and transitioning, and the universe as a whole is full and empty. Hard to believe that. Hard to get your head around it as well. The black hole sucks everything up until you've got the last one, and boom, the whole thing is then empty. You'd say gas. The whole thing starts over again, and over and over and over and over and over and over again. So technically, there is no start. There is no end. There's only ever really now. In that moment, there's that now moment. And just like you could walk around the whole entire planet, if you didn't remember, and let's say you were a dinosaur limited back and you didn't have memory, I don't know, just really forgetful, you would just keep endlessly walking, migrating around and around and around and around and around and around and around. And I guess that's the difference between humans and animals in a way. Animals use it in a very different way. They use scent to know. But would they truly know that they've just, well, I've been here before, but if you still set them on a straight course and that, I don't think they'd have anything to think above that type of thinking, apart from, I've just been here before. Humans are gifted in that aspect, that they've been, I'd say, unlocked, given a gift. Now see what you can do with that. So
Actually,
that's my understanding. Anyway, I'm gonna cut this video short. And it's getting very late, so I think you need to settle down. But there we are. Boom.